Well, let's bring in our Tuesday panel now. Labor Senator for Queensland, Nita Green, joins us in the studio, along with Victorian Nationals MP Anne Webster. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for joining us on Capitol Hill. Nita Green, let's start with you. It appears that the government is going to make some concessions on its climate bill with Senator Pocock. How much of this is about keeping him in the tent in the very early days of the Albanese government?
I think this is about forming consensus and passing a really important piece of legislation in the climate change bill. And so we do need to work with the crossbench in the Senate, and I think that's a really good thing. And what we've been able to do, I think, is come to an agreement on some amendments. We'll see how those bear out through the debate in the Senate. But I'm really excited that today it looks like we are going to move forward with this debate, and finally we're going to have a piece of legislation that has emissions targets in it to make sure that we have action on climate change finally, after a decade of no action at all.
You may well have heard Simon Birmingham just before you came into the studio. He was effectively describing this bill as a piece of symbolism, but it's not necessarily required because you've already signed all of the UN declarations and the like to have that 43% emissions reduction target by 2030 recognised by the international community. Given that's the view of coalition senators, it's also somewhat the view of, in a slightly different way, of the Greens and the Independents, who are not thrilled with this bill. They don't think it goes far enough. Why not cede to more of Senator Pocock's demands here?
Well, just to Senator Birmingham's point, I think I'm the special envoy for the Great Barrier Reef, and I can tell you that this legislation is not just symbolic. It is very important to people who work on the reef, whose jobs rely on the Great Barrier Reef, that we have a clear intention in legislation about reducing emissions. And it's about having a plan and some certainty for industry and business. And I think that's what's really important about the legislation. I think when it comes to the amendments that Senator Pocock is talking about, look, as I said, we will work with any senator that has a proposal to make the bill better and to make sure that we can pass that in a consensus way, to make sure that the Senate agrees. It's an opportunity, I think, to bring the Parliament together on this important issue that has been so divisive for so many years. And it is a shame that the opposition have so far said that they won't be supporting this bill.
Well, Anne Webster, you represent an area of regional Victoria, Mallee, northwest corner, no doubt an area that is prone to the droughts and floods and all sorts of natural disasters that are born out from climate change. Has the coalition in seats like yours effectively dealt itself out of this conversation by refusing to even touch this legislation?
Well, I think the key that Simon Birmingham raised is that this is about symbolism. The agreement or the signing of the PM in Europe for this target has already been done, and we're already committed to that as a nation. In Mallee, where I come from, we have 44 solar farms, we have 11 wind farms, we have 2 interconnectors in process under the coalition being developed in order to manage dispatchable power. I'm more interested in outcomes, and I want to know that whatever is put on the table here is actually going to result in sustainable, affordable and reliable electricity for the nation of Australia. And I think there are other factors that need to be considered. The Nats have been very strong on soil biodiversity, measures to ensure that soil is healthier because it does impact climate, and I'm particularly interested in that side of things, and I'm not hearing the government talking about that yet.
So would you dismiss suggestions that you're out of touch when you've got people like the National Farmers Federation all saying that this is an important step forward down and an important way to try to end these climate battles?
No, not at all. I think what needs to be recognised is that the coalition not only invested and partnered with industry to ensure $35 billion in renewables and in mitigation plans and actions over the past period of time, that I think we're very in touch, and we're very in touch with regional communities who don't want to pay more for their electricity. I think I mentioned to you last time I was on the program about a gas producer a user install for a brickworks company that had his May bill was $98,000 and June bill was $495,000. That's untenable. So whatever we put into place must ensure that energy is workable, it's reliable, sustainable and affordable.
Nita Green, staying with the climate theme, one of Senator Pocock's key criticisms of the Labor Party at the moment is that it's pushing ahead with a 43% target, but then opening up large swathes of Australia's coastline to gas and oil exploration. You mentioned you're the special envoy for the Great Barrier Reef. How is it tenable to be arguing and looking after the Great Barrier Reef when you're also opening up those sort of deposits?
Well, large swathes is not the language that I would be using. We are being consistent with the laws around environmental approvals when it comes to any opening up of oil, gas fields or even new mining. I think we need to work together with industry and mining companies, and they are really invested in the outcomes of the reef as well. I know that's a really uncomfortable position for people like the Greens who want to build some hysteria around this topic, but we need to work together with those industries to make sure that we can have energy now and into the future that is cleaner, that is cheaper, and that reduces emissions so that the reef is resilient when it comes to climate change. I don't think that regional Australians want to see this become a divisive debate and for us to move away from the core issue, which is that we are committed to emissions reductions. That is an important step for us to take forward. We are doing that, and we have signalled to industry that we want to see more investment in renewable energy, and we will see that when this bill is passed.
I feel like we could fill an entire couple of hours on this very issue, but I do want to move on because time is escaping us. Anne Webster, we're over half an hour from another rates decision from the Reserve Bank. How hard is another rate rise going to hit people in the electorate of Mallee?
Look, I think for those who have mortgages, I think it will be hard. For those who have investments, hopefully it's passed on and they will be happier. I worry about the cost of living across the board, and food prices, fuel prices, the fuel excise being going back to standard practice now. The cost of energy, as we've already said, I'm really concerned about the outcome. I think the RBA has a job to do. It has to manage the threat of inflation, and it's doing that job, we trust. And so it's, these are decisions that they must make. My heart is with the people who actually experience cost of living that is just hurting them. They've got to choose whether they put a child into a sports program or whether they pay their electricity bill. And that's deeply concerning.
So do you think, particularly representing a regional electorate where the kilometres are vast, do you think there should be a situation where the cut to the fuel excise is extended beyond the end of this month?
Look, I said when it was being implemented, I think again I was talking with you about this.
All the big news happens on this show, you know that.
Yeah, all the news. I think that it depends whether it's going to change the long-term projections, and I don't think it is. I think we're just going to be facing the pain for some time to come, and the issue is whether the government now ensures that things like $275 drop in electricity prices is actually delivered. Talk is cheap when people are hurting, and action has to be taken to ensure that people don't suffer more than they inevitably have to in the environment that we're all living in.
Nita Green, Anne Webster said the RBA is doing a job here. It's trying to curb inflation. But do you think the RBA bears any responsibility for, say, new homeowners who got into the market when rates were incredibly low, had been told by people like Philip Lowe that rates weren't going to go up until 2024, and are now finding themselves dealing with hundreds of dollars extra on their repayments as a result of these rises?
Well, as Anne says, that the RBA is independent, and I'm not about to come on here and criticise the governor of the RBA, who is doing, I think, what he needs to be doing in terms of inflation. But what the conversation about the rate rise is today is a reminder that we are dealing with cost of living pressures, that we are certainly in a situation where we have high inflation, that people are really doing it tough, and we need to step forward with taking action to increase wages wages and make sure that people are able to deal with cost of living pressures, and when there are inevitable rate rises, that their wages are able to keep up with the cost of living.
Well, no doubt the news of the rate rises will trickle through to both of your chambers during question time. And Webster, Nita Green, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Authorised by Anne Webster, The Nationals, Mildura.